My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hello. Hello and welcome to the Shift with Sam Baker podcast, coming to you live from the Birmingham Rep as part of Birmingham Literature Festival. For those who don't know me, I'm journalist and author Sam Baker, and I'm delighted to be here with one of the funniest, warmest women you're ever likely to encounter, Ruth Jones. And she's pretending it's not true, but it is true. To be honest, we all know Ruth doesn't need any introduction, but we'll give her a little one. She's the co-writer and star of Stella and the BAFTA award-winning Gavin and Stacey. She is also the best-selling author of 3 Sunday Times bestsellers, Never Greener, Us Three, and now, hot off the press, Love Untold. Warm, open-hearted and generous, Love Untold sees Ruth turn her attention to motherhood and daughterhood as we meet 4 generations of women of the Meredith family, Grace, Alys, Elin and Beca, and encounter the minefield of complications that form the mother-daughter bond, love, hate, and everything in between. You will laugh, you will cry, you will wince, but above all, you'll recognise the feelings that Ruth evokes in the 4 women. Ruth, thank you for coming on the Shift Live.
Oh, thank you, Sam. It's lovely to be
Are
here.
you dying now?
Oh, I've just broken the chair. That's a good start.
Yeah. Do you want to draw a picture for us of the women of Love Untold?
Well, as you say, it's a multi-generational book. It's a book story. It's about 4 women from the same family, all Welsh, and Grace is at the top of the chain. She's nearly 90. Her daughter Alys is 70-odd. Her daughter Elin is 50-odd. I don't know why we're the odd bit. And her daughter Beca is 16. And 30 years ago, there was a big fallout in the family. And Alys, the 70-something-year-old, she abandoned them. She abandoned her mother and her daughter. She had not behaved very well at all in the build-up to this, and really did behave quite badly, and disappeared and has never been seen since. And Grace, you know, it's her daughter. She misses her very much, and she writes letters to her that she never sends. And Elin, on the other hand, as far as she's concerned, her mother is she just no longer exists. She's deleted her from her mind. She doesn't want anything to do with her. She doesn't even mention her anymore. And, you know, for Grace, she's of an age now where she's feeling, she really does wish that she could find Alys again. And she's given a clue that leads or could lead to her whereabouts. But Grace knows that if she tries to find Alys and succeeds, it's going to cause huge repercussions with her granddaughter Elin, who wants nothing to do with her mother. So it's going to cause huge ripples in the family. Meanwhile, poor old Beca at the end of the chain doesn't even know her grandmother Alys exists. She, as far as she's concerned, she died years ago and never gets mentioned in the family, but she's got her own issues to deal with. So it's set in Wales, it's set in Cardiff, and a fictitious seaside town on the west coast called Dillon's Quay. And as you say, it looks at the relationships between mothers and daughters. And I think it'd be fair to say that it's moving at times, but it's also funny. So it's not all doom and gloom by any means. So there are a few laughs in there.
Do you want to give us some laughs now?
Oh,
yeah, go for it.
That's
give us a little
setting the bar.
read. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I think I can read something which will give you an idea about Elin's character. So Elin is the 50-something-year-old. Look at me now. I'm going to be really common and clean my glasses on my clothes. And Elin is early 50s. She's a head teacher. She's very conscientious about her job. Sometimes she puts work before anything else. And she's been married for 20-odd years to Greg, quite happily sort of tootling along. They've got Beca, obviously, their daughter. But in recent times, things have gone a bit stale between them. It's not been great. And Greg has been getting into fitness quite a lot recently. He sort of disappears down to the gym and he's playing tennis a lot. And they don't really seem to have seen much of each other. And then one day, Elin, being the control freak that she is, I mean, she's the sort of person, she has a colour-coded wardrobe. You know, all her clothes are in a certain order. She's sorting out Greg's socks and she finds a Valentine card in cellophane. And she thinks that's really odd because they don't send Valentine cards to each other. However, she thinks, well, maybe he's trying to make a bit of an effort here because things haven't been great between them. So she thinks, well, I'm going to make an effort too. So she goes to Marks and Spencer and she gets a meal deal. And she buys a nice, sexy, lacy basque as well. And she knows it's really cheesy, but she takes a photo of herself and she WhatsApps it to him saying, hey, Valentine, steak for dinner, and this is what's for dessert. And she's cringing. And he replies, and he's like, okay, yeah, see you later. I'll be back later. So she waits for him. He doesn't make it back for dinner, but eventually he comes in. He's not hungry anymore, but he sort of says to her, well, I'll see you upstairs, because they've got this arrangement. And it's very unromantic and very cringy for them. So this is what happens later. In the bedroom an hour later, they both stood facing each other, an overwhelming sense of obligation to this event burning between them. Haven't done this in a while, Greg had joked, and she'd grinned back before attempting to undress seductively and reveal the new underwear beneath. Nice, he'd said, looking genuinely impressed, and reached forward to start kissing her. His arms around her back, they fell into their 20-year-old predictable routine. Begin with a kiss, then a hand on the boob, before reaching down to squeeze her buttocks. Can I say buttocks here? Is that?
Yes.
I read this in
friends, you're fine.
I read this in a church the other night, and I had to self-censor as I went along. It was how things between them had always begun. But Elin felt herself rise up and outside of what was happening. God, I feel like a big sofa cushion, she thought, as Greg continued kissing her. She tried to put the thought out of her mind and reach into the depths for some grain of desire, but there was none to be found. She'd felt entirely empty, devoid of all sensuousness. If anything, she'd simply felt foolish. She could have faked enjoyment, made all the right noises of encouragement till they reached the other side, were it not for the fact that Greg's fitness watch got caught on the lacing of the basque. And then the whole process descended into farce. It wasn't even a comical, sexy moment that led from laughter into lust. It was just awkward beyond belief. And what was worse, it was irritating. Oh, for God's sake, Greg, I don't see why you have to wear that bloody thing all the time. Because it's monitoring my heart rate variability. Yeah, well, and does it monitor how annoying you are as well? Oh, shut up, Elin, bloody hell. Look, have you got some scissors? In my bedside drawer. They'd had to move together as if in a three-legged race, edging their way carefully towards the bedside with Greg's hand still attached to the delicate lace. Reaching into the drawer, Elin saw with horror the tube of KY, another magazine suggestion that she'd bought into to help things along. The article, no doubt written by someone half her age, had buoyantly announced that it was perfectly normal at Ellen's age to require a little assistance. Let me get them, Elin had snapped, attempting to hide the KY as she reached for a small pair of nail scissors and passed them to Greg. Try to minimise the damage, she said, aware that now she was sounding like a head teacher. Wait, when you cut it, I mean. This thing wasn't cheap, you know. She'd stood patiently as Greg snipped at the lace, freeing the links of the watch. She tried not to stare at his bald patch, which seemed to have grown infinitely bigger. Once they'd finally become disentangled, they both sat down on the bed in silence. Elin noticed that one of her suspenders had wriggled free, leaving the stocking on her right leg to sag forlornly. She thought about reattaching it, but wondered what the point would be. "I guess we shouldn't force these things," Greg had said before sloping off to the bathroom. His pee seemed to go on interminably, and Elin sighed to herself at the thought that this had become the soundtrack to their intimacy. Their intimacy. What intimacy? Greg had referred to it as these things. She struggled to get out of the basque before he returned to the bedroom. She didn't think she could take any more humiliation, and yet was drawn to it like a masochistic moth to a candle. "I take it you decided against the card," she muttered. "What card?" "The card in your sports drawer. I saw it." "Oh, Jesus, Elin, you snooping on me now?" "No, I was pairing your socks." There was a painful silence, and then he said, "I took it to work. I was going to post it, but I forgot." "Yeah, well, that just about says it all, doesn't it?" she sighed, desperate to hide the sob that had caught in her throat. That night they slept with their backs towards each other, like they always did these days. And the following morning they got up and went about their day as if the events of the night before had never happened. Happy sodding Valentine's Day.
It's so rare for people to write so honestly about the joys of keeping a long-term relationship alive. Do you get that thing where whenever you write a scene like that, everybody says, "Is that you, Ruth?"
Well, of course, they're bound to say that. But I have a fantastic sex life. So.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's important to not portray... I love real life, and real life problems and issues in a book are quite refreshing. Things aren't all sugar-coated, and I think there's a huge problem in putting pressure on people to think they should be living their life in a certain way. The classic is the old Dickensian Christmas, isn't it? And having the lovely decorations and this nuclear family and everybody all happy together with all these amazing presents and having the food. I mean, I'm sorry, but what Christmas dinner have you ever seen like they show in the adverts? It just doesn't happen. My family, I'm one of 4 kids, so when we all have Christmas, say, at my mum's, it's quite chaotic. It's not, I mean, everybody ends up eating at different times. There's no sort of beautiful table decoration in the centerpiece, or and these amazing table settings. It isn't like that. So some people will be sitting there eating out off their lap, and and I think it's important to say that that life isn't perfect, and don't feel pressured that you have to aspire to something that actually doesn't exist.
I think that's one of the things you do so brilliantly, though, in all your books and in your TV writing, is you write characters who are completely identifiable, often lovable, not always likeable, but totally recognisable. And you have them say, the women in this book say the most vile things to each other sometimes. But you manage to do that in a way that is never cruel. And that's quite tough. How do you pull that off?
Well, I think, I know it's an old saying, but I think it's true that you hurt the ones you love most. So I think, especially mums and daughters, I think you almost feel, certainly from the mother to the daughter, I feel like it's like you can get away with it. You can get away with saying things, but that maternal love is so unconditional that it's kind of waterproof. And so I think that's an important part of it, definitely. I'm just trying to think what else. Oh, I had a really good thought then. I hate it when that happens, when it's in my head and then it disappears. Tell me again what you were saying about what...
Oh, God, it's just like this double brain fog going on up here. It's just like... Well, let's talk about mothers and daughters.
The reality of relationships, wasn't it?
Yeah, God, yeah. That was like right back at the beginning. Yeah, totally. But let's talk about mothers and daughters. What made you decide, because you wrote, the first book was Evergreen, was about, relationships, and Us Three was brilliantly depicted friendships and growing away from each other. What made you decide, okay, I'm going to turn my gimlet gaze onto motherhood and daughterhood? Because daughterhood, I think, is written about much less than motherhood, actually.
Yeah, and do you know what I thought of the other day? Why do we say daughter and yet we say laughter? Why don't we say dafter or laughter or laughter? Anyway,
I think I like the idea of being a dafter.
Dafter, yes. This is my dafter, in whom I am most proud. Nevergreener was, it was about an affair, quite an intense relationship. I don't want to call it a romantic relationship because it wasn't really. It was quite hedonistic and very sex-driven. And Us Three, was about long-term female friendship. So I wanted to move away from those two areas. So family seemed like the next natural step to take. And I was very interested in, two things happened. One was that I went to West Wales. I did an episode of Who Do You Think You Are for the BBC. And it was quite funny, actually, because the night before I was due to start filming, they'd asked me to meet at my mum's house in Porthcawl. And so I spoke to the producer the night before to arrange timings and things. And I said, will I need my passport?
Optimist.
And she said, no. Will we be going over the Severn Bridge? No. Okay. But we went to Newquay in West Wales, which I'd never been to before, and I found out all this history about my family, and I was presented with this photograph taken in, I think, 1860 of these 9 siblings, all of whom were my ancestors, and I went to the home where they were brought up, and it was just a real privilege to be able to go on that journey. But seeing those young people, those young faces, I just thought, gosh, they were alive and vibrant and living their young lives at that time, and now they're gone. And I just I'm quite fascinated by how life, we're all going to peg it at some point, aren't we? But just that idea of the milestones that we go through and the journeys that we go on, and the people that we were when we were younger, the people we are when we are the age we are now. And I think it was that whole thing about generations, and I wanted to write something multi-generational to look at the older generation member of the family. What were they like when they were younger? And I remember speaking to one of my friend's kids who was 16 at the time, and they were having trouble at school, and I thought I'll give some sage advice from an old lady that I am, very wise. And I could see her glaze over, because she was looking at me going, what do you know about being 16? You're old. And it frustrated me because I wanted to say, well, I think I did say to her, I was 16 once. I do know what it feels like. It may have been a different social landscape, and we didn't have mobile phones, and our music, we used to put a cassette in a Walkman and things like that. We didn't have social media and all these pressures that you have, but we still had those emotions, those big emotions that you have when you're a teenager. And it was that feeling of almost wanting to say, I wish I could transport you back to when I was 16. I wish you could meet me when I was 16. Somebody came to a book event last night that had taken a drama workshop that I'd attended when I was 17, and it was a group photo. In that picture, there were 3 girls who I'm still friends with now, and I said, oh my God, is that me? And I looked so damn cool. I was so impressed. And I just thought, gosh, that was me then, and that, and the whole idea of time passing and us getting older and wanting to kind of desperately say to younger people, no, I know what it's like. But of course, when you're that age, and I was guilty of it too, I would look at my grandmothers when I was a teenager and just think, oh, well, they're just old women. They don't know, they're old. And I wish now that I had asked my grandmothers more about their lives when they were younger, because it would have been fascinating. But of course, when you are that age, you're sort of focusing on just this little bit here. You're not really thinking about what your old granny was like when she was younger. But it's one of the things I explore in the book is we flash back quite a lot. We certainly with the three older women, we revisit their lives when they were younger. And I think that's important to tell the story of how they got to where they've got to and who they've become and what these tensions and misunderstandings caused in their current relationship.
How old do you think you were before you started to see your parents and possibly grandparents as actual people rather than just old people who stopped you doing things?
It's funny, isn't it? Because at my mum's house, she's got like this cabinet in the hall and a piece of glass on the top, and she puts lots of photos underneath the glass. And there was a photo taken of my mum and dad when we went camping in 1976. And I remember it really well. I think we were in Spain, and there'd been a huge deluge of rain, and they were laughing because we had a tent, and it was just one of those chaotic situations where everything had to be dried out. And there's this brilliant picture of my mum and dad. And my mum's in shorts, and she's got her hair in a headscarf, and she looks so gorgeous. I mean, she still looks gorgeous, my mum, but and I remember looking at it thinking, her and my dad, I'm thinking, God, but they were always older people, so it's almost like sometimes only a photograph will show you what they actually were like back then. But I think probably when I got into my 30s, and certainly my 40s, is when there was a switch. I always think there's a switch, isn't there, from when you're little and your parents hold your hand, or your grandparents or older adults in your life hold your hand across the road, and then cut to decades later. I know I do it to my mum now, where I kind of look after her crossing the road, and how that changes, and it's sad, but it's I think there's a thing where I can remember being sort of, I guess, in my 20s, thought I knew everything, and I remember clearly saying to my mum, "Why do you drink Blue Nun? I mean, that's just really naff, Mum. You should be drinking something." I was probably drinking Ernst and Gallo or something. Yeah. "Mum, why did you drink?" And she went, "Because I like it." And I remember thinking that wasn't reason enough. But now I think, yeah, well, fine, drink what you want to drink, So it's taken a while to get to that stage in my life where I've always respected my parents, but I think there was always that thing of thinking I knew better than them. And of course you don't. You just see things differently, that's all. And we really need to respect both sides, I think.
Yeah, I think it takes quite a long time, doesn't it, for you to look at, say, your grandparents and to think about what their life was actually like that might have turned them, if you think they were annoying or they were strict or they were unloving or whatever, what might have happened.
Absolutely.
To make that happen. Yeah. What's your relationship like with your mother? You're close, aren't you?
Yes, as I said, I'm one of four, 2 boys and 2 girls, and we all have a very different relationship with my mum, it's lovely. And she's a really centred, grounded woman. She's 85 now. She was a doctor in her working life, and she is very. She's inspired the character of Grace quite a lot, in the sense that She has an attitude to life. She hates waste. I mean, you look in her cupboard, she washes ice cream containers, yogurt containers, and she uses them for freezing things. She's the recycling queen, basically.
Can I just ask, you don't do that?
Well, I don't buy ice cream.
Because they've changed them now. They're cardboard, those containers.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's useless.
Yeah, well, that's how long she's had them for, you see. But she's very, I mean, what Grace is described as saying that her middle name is Make, Do and Mend. And my mum's very much like that. You know, she doesn't see the point in replacing things if they're working perfectly, if they're functioning perfectly well.
Did you used to have to iron Christmas wrapping paper to get the sellotape off? No?
Oh, no, because... Well, now, no.
I need to know. Did other people have to do that? Oh, there's one. Okay, I feel like not completely sad now.
I get those bags, and then you can reuse those as long as you don't write on the little label.
I mean in 1976.
Oh, I
now.
see. Oh, right. But Mum inspired Grace in lots of ways. But I can remember saying to my mum when I was writing the book, I said, Mum, one of the main characters in my book is nearly 90, and she's very feisty. She cooks things from scratch. She walks a lot. She does yoga and Pilates, and she goes swimming in the sea. And my mum said, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Nobody will ever believe that.
And your mum does do that?
No, bless her, no, she doesn't. She does walk. She walks down to town and she does cook pretty much from scratch, and she goes and she gets her vegetables in her rucksack and walks back again. I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but she's stopped driving now because, not because she didn't feel she could still do it, but because she was really fed up with the insurance company.
And what about Beca? Because Beca is 16 and she's just at that point that we were talking about where you think you know it all and you think your mum is just there to ruin your life, and she's discovering a lot about herself. Do you have young women in your life who you canvassed?
Yeah, well, actually, I just in the back of the acknowledgements, I had to acknowledge some people because certainly I thought, well, I can sort of write about the three older women, but I'd like to just certainly with dialogue, I wanted to be a bit more correct with 16-year-old dialogue. And where was it? Yes, to my family. I'm just trying to find. Sorry, talk amongst yourselves. To my niece Nusha for patiently answering random questions from an old person to a young one, because she would. I would say, well, how would you say that something was brilliant? She said, well, I'd probably say it's sick. And I thought, oh, gosh. And I told my sister read the proof copy of Love Untold. She said, Mum won't get that. She won't understand why you're saying something's sick. And, so I didn't go all out because I didn't want to look like I was so over-researched that I exactly knew how young people spoke. I wanted it to be a kind of a nod to young people. I think there's a friendship in there. Beca forms a friendship with a brilliant, one of my favourite characters in the book called Susie, and she's not a main character, but she is, she's really lively, she's very ambitious, she wants to make it in the music world, and I just love her, and she just swears all the time. And Elin asks her at one point, why do you swear? And she goes, I don't know. She's like proper card. She goes, I don't know. I think it's just that I haven't got patience to do it all properly and wait for everybody. So I just can't be bothered. And she's like, she's really energetic and lively. And, so I had to go with the energy of the characters. Like Beca is really self-conscious. She's a very self-conscious girl, and is always like tugging at her sleeves and feeling embarrassed to even sort of exist. And I thought, I can remember feeling like that. And so it was more about the feelings of them, the energies of those young people.
It's like, I mean, as you've just shown in the reading you did at the beginning, you write, I mean, all of the women are brilliant, actually, but you write brilliant characters in midlife and capture those concerns. But quite often when we turn on the TV, we don't see many women in midlife. And the women we do see just tend to be the butt of the joke. Why do you think that is?
Can I blame it on social media? Normally everything gets blamed on social media. I don't know. Is it is it that you're meant to look a certain way, and there's such a battle, isn't there, with age, to look a certain way, to fight the lines with Botox or fillers or whatever. I'm so grateful that I have got no desire whatsoever to have Botox. Mainly I'm scared of needles anyway, and fillers and all that. And yes, I do dye my hair, but even that is becoming a ridiculous battle now. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to let it grow through. I think there's so much pressure to keep looking young that in a way, if you have a character on screen who looks naturally her age, it sort of goes against the grain somehow. I don't know. I don't know why it is. I mean, for me, I love to see older characters portrayed really well, really sassy, witty characters on screen, and sexy as well, not just the she's a bit daft, isn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, mum's a bit hot and a bit cross, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Or even if they are, highly sexualised and have this kind of sexual hunger and make a joke of that. And it's a shame, really. I can't see the problem in presenting women of all ages on screen, because we don't want to look at all the same thing. We don't want to have the same bland palette, do we, on screen? I don't, anyway.
No, I don't. I totally don't. And I love you for giving Elin some great sex later in the book after the terrible Valentine's night.
She had to redeem herself, and so there is quite a nice. All I'm going to say is it involves a granite island. That's all I'm going to say.
It's good to know those granite islands have a real use. I love the way that you give Alys and Elin have very, very different approaches to ageing, don't they? I mean, Alys she knocks a decade off her age. She has the works a couple of times a year.
Yeah. Every 2 years, she has a little biannual trip to India, and she tells everybody she's 59, and she decides that when she reaches, I think in reality she's 73. She decides that when she has her 73rd birthday, she ought to maybe have a 60th. Yeah, I think that it's. I like the difference. I mean, that's another thing with mothers and daughters. I think sometimes, and hopefully I've achieved this in Love Untold, where there's a sort of an expectation or a desire for your daughter as a mum to fulfil what you want, your ambitions for them. And of course, they're going to be their own woman and they're going to do their own thing. And so Alys really didn't go with what Grace probably wanted for her, which was maybe to follow in her footsteps. That didn't work out. She was quite a rebellious person. She had a lot of issues that were caused through misunderstanding, and she turns to booze and is a very fragile person, actually. And Elin, Alys's daughter, is the complete opposite to Alys. So she wants to make sure that she has has a straight life and is, I suppose she is a control freak.
Totally,
if she has a gin and tonic, she measures the gin and she just has the one. She's very, very controlled in that way. And she wants her daughter, Beca, to be academically superb, and that's not going to happen because that's not what Beca wants. That's not for her personal journey. She's musically very talented, but she is not academically talented, and GCSEs don't really do it for her. So it's interesting, I think, to see that where, you know, the parents, or certainly the mothers, want something for the daughter and the daughter doesn't want it, but they want something for their daughter and they don't want it. I quite like that little chain of events.
And I think there's always that sense, isn't there, with mother-daughter relationships. It's like, do you want it for them or do you want it for you?
Exactly. It's an important question to ask, isn't it? I really think so.
Definitely. You and I have very similar blended family setups. I mean, you're a long-time stepmom, aren't you? And I've been a stepmom for 30-odd years. How is that? Do you have stepdaughters?
Yes.
How is that? How have you evolved that relationship?
It's difficult to describe, really. I don't know if there was any set plan. Our relationship just became what it was, and I think it's safe to say that it seems to work, the setup. But I should say that I have recently become a step-grandmother. Oh my gosh, that's a life changer. My middle stepdaughter has a little girl who's now 16 months, and I'm utterly besotted with her. I literally could just look at videos of her all day long, and I've dived straight in. I'm very hands-on with nappy changing and snacks and bedtime, and I am Nanny Ruth. And I love her. I absolutely love her. So she's been a real, she's been a joy to the whole family, actually. It's been lovely. We've all got our own little relationship with her, you know.
Was that a bit of a shift, that kind of like, oh, I'm a granny now?
Well, it's funny, actually, because, you know, you sort of hear stories of people saying, like, especially I've seen it in dramas and things where they go, oh no, I can't believe I'm going to be a grandmother. That makes me feel really old. It's not really, is it? If you think about it. I mean, people become grandparents at 40 sometimes. I mean, it's not, it's quite a normal thing. I think it's daft to be bothered by being a grandmother. I think it's a very impressive achievement. And one of my best friends, she has become a grandmother almost at the same time. So our grandchildren are 2 months apart, and we've given each other license to send each other as many photographs and videos as we want, because we know everybody else will get bored, but we don't. So we can just send them ad infinitum, and it's a joy. It really is. It really is. It does open your mind. I mean, I never thought I would feel like that. But I tell you what it does is makes you realise the real true meaning of living in the moment. Because when I'm watching her be so delighted by the smallest little thing and fascinated, and, you know, you just think she's just living in the moment now. I want some of that.
And it reminds you that we do all have that in us somewhere.
Yes, exactly, that playfulness.
Down, and that kind of, celebrating the, oh, look at the lights.
Yes,
you know.
Yes, exactly.
You also write brilliantly in this book and also in Us Three about menopause. I mean, I think you gave poor old Catherine a hot flush on page 2 in Us Three.
Yes.
Poor woman. And Elin has a really rough time. What has your personal menopause experience been?
I kind of miss the hot flushes. I used to quite like them. I think they started about 4 years ago. I remember I was doing a play. I was rehearsing a play, and I used to have to go and stand by the fire door and my mum bought me this brilliant device, which was, you put it around your neck and it had 2 fans that came out like that.
Wow, where did she get that?
Yeah, I know, she got it on, she said, I got it online. I was so pleased, it was great. But they've kind of stopped. I didn't have a great time last year. I just got quite low, and I found and very anxious, and sleep was terrible, all of those symptoms that you hear about. And I just thought, oh gosh, I can't handle this. I met up with a friend of mine she's actually a couple of years younger than me, but she was menopausal, and she went, "Why aren't you on HRT? It's a no-brainer." And I did, so I started last November, and it was incredible. It was actually almost overnight, sort of seemed to change things. And it is a bit of a journey of discovering what's the right level for you and all that. But no, I'm really, really glad I've done it. But then you get people that say, "Oh, I don't know, you hear bad things about HRT," and I don't know. There's always going to be somebody that the naysayers. But for me personally, I mean, it isn't probably for everybody, but for me, it's been okay. And actually, I heard a really great thing, which I stole and I put into Love Untold, which was where Grace says to Elin about the menopause, and she says, "I think it's, we've had our bodies hijacked for all these years, and it's like now we can have them back again." And I thought, yeah, that's really true. Actually, I think sometimes you can see events in the future that are inevitable coming over the horizon at you, and you go, "Oh, I'm never going to deal with that." I mean, I remember feeling really scared about turning 40. 40? God, just but a babe at 40 now. And I think you see these events coming at you, but when you actually get to them, they're nothing. They're nothing. They really aren't. We've got to talk about menopause more, I think, and I think it is becoming much more prevalent and not an embarrassing subject to talk about. And because it shouldn't be, it's just 50% of the population will go through it.
Exactly. So why are we hiding it?
Yeah. And I really don't want to be that anti-male person, but I do think if men had menopause, it would be handled much differently.
Oh, yeah, there'd be all the drugs, there'd be parties.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Right, I'm going to ask you the questions I always ask at the end now. What's your emotional age?
"42.
Why?
Oh. Well, because I think that's possibly where I started to feel I calmed down. I got over the hump of reaching 40, and it really wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. I didn't drink from the age of 40 to 49, and that helped a lot, I think, because I think alcohol just fuels your anxiety. So I think I felt a lot calmer. I was healthier, and I just viewed the world in a much calmer way, I think. And perhaps I have to say, maybe I was in a stable place in my life and with my career as well. So, yeah, 42 is good.
Give us a book recommendation.
I have so many. Well, there's a book I have been recommending on all my events because I just think it's fantastic. And it's not a book I would have ever picked up and chosen, if I'm honest, but somebody gave it to me to read. It's a debut novel by a writer called Sean Lusk, and it's called The Second Sight of Zachary Cloudsley. And it's set in the mid-18th century. It's about a clockmaker and his son has the ability to see in the future and the past. He's like a kind of an 18th century mind reader. It's astonishing. The style of it is like a combination of Charles Dickens and it would be the love child of Charles Dickens and Isabel Allende. It's got magical realism in it and beautiful kind of rich Dickensian descriptions. It's fantastic. The Second Sight of Zachary Cloudsley. Totally recommend that. And then if I may have a couple of others. I know
Go on.
I know you interviewed Elif Shafak today, and I just think The Island of Missing Trees. Has anyone read that?
It's brilliant.
Why not? It's The Island of Missing Trees, set in Cyprus, 1974, just before the Civil War. It's a love story, in essence, between a Greek Cypriot boy and a Turkish Cypriot girl. And the narrator of the whole tale is a fig tree. And it's just stunning. It's spectacular and totally unexpected. I would thoroughly recommend that. And quick fire, Joanna Cannon, A Tidy Ending, and Rachel Joyce's latest, Maureen Fry and the Angel of the North. Yeah, they would be my. I'm also reading Graham Norton's book at the moment, which is keeps you on the edge all the time, going, well, I don't know. Well, what is it? What is it? What is it? I won't explain anymore, but that really keeps you hooked. Graham Norton's latest, Forever Home, that's called.
That lot should keep you going till Christmas.
Yes.
What one piece of advice would you give younger women?
Don't take any shit. And certainly do not be forced into doing things with boys or girls that you don't feel comfortable with. Just don't do it. You don't need to. You've got plenty of time. You've got plenty of time. Don't feel obliged. Never feel obliged.
Good, very good advice. What's your superpower?
My superpower, Nessa Shanessa Jenkins.
Who is your old bird role model?
Well, I read this really good novel by Andrew Clark. Well, it's a kind of historical novel, sort of based on historical fact, called Valhalla. And it was about Mary of Teck, Queen Mary, who married George V. And it's a really interesting story about how she got there. She was great. I really, really like learning about her. She was a really... For the time in which she lived, I thought she was quite forward-thinking. But it's got to be my mum, really, ultimately. It's got to be my mum. She's taught me so much about being compassionate to people, seeing the other side of the story, putting yourself in other people's shoes. But also she taught me how to parallel park and and how to use the shop windows as a reflector when you are parking to see how far you've got from your back bumper to the car behind you. So she's pretty cool, my mum.
Your mum is endlessly useful.
She is. She's been knitting nativity sets recently, so I've commissioned 3 to give to my stepkids because they're so brilliant. Of course, she uses up wool. She wouldn't buy any wool. She just finds bits of wool in the house. And
of course, recycling.
Yes.
Yeah. Unpicking jumpers, that kind of stuff. And lastly, how many fucks do you give?
How many fucks do I give? I would say it's somewhere between 3,042 and 3,045. Somewhere there.
Is that less than it used to be?
No, I think my giving a fuck rate has gone... Would that have made it go up? I don't know.
Well, I would have thought it might have
How
gone
many fucks
down.
do I give?
But maybe
I suppose what you're saying, though, is how many fucks do I give? Oh, well, actually, I've got a better answer for that.
Okay, go on then.
How many fucks do I give? I give none. I give none. Because actually, to get to the age of 56 and to keep giving a fuck, then it's a waste of time. I haven't got that many years left. I'm not going to waste the time I've got left giving a fuck. So.
Thank you, Ruth. That is all we've got time for, unfortunately. Ruth will be signing in the lobby. She'll be signing any book you can get your hands on, probably. It doesn't have to be one of hers. It could be Thomas Hardy, it could be Dickens.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Ruth, for coming on the shift.
Thank you.
You've been
so
fantastic.
Much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can hear a new episode of The Shift each Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please do rate, review and follow, because it really does help other people find us. And if you'd like to support The Shift further, please consider becoming a member of our community. Find out more at steady.media/The Shift.